Hello everyone. This is the 8th part of the story, I'm Voldemort. Chapter 59, Lethifold and Marking. The second Tom saw the black cloak gliding above the bush, he knew that it was a Lethifold. What had him confused was the fact that Lethifolds are only found in tropical climates. How could one of them get into the forbidden forest? These questions were pointless as every second that passes, the black cloak grows closer and closer. As the Lethifold was a couple of meters away, Tom aimed his wand at it and called the only spell he knew that could save him. Expecto Patronum. Tom calls and a bright blue light exits his wand. With the blue light came a fully corporeal Thestral Patronus. The Thestral's aura brought a calming and happy atmosphere to what once was a very dire situation. That happy aura rushed outward and pushed the Lethifold back. Just the light the Patronus gave off seemed to singe the cloak as it shrieked in pain. Seeing that its prey conjured the bane of its existence, the Lethifold made a run for it. Tom thought for a second about letting it go, but he can't leave such a dangerous creature on the outskirts of a children's boarding school. Not to mention that 1/4 of the school consists of his own followers. He can't just allow something like this to possibly harm his people. Making up his mind, Tom climbed onto the back of his Thestral Patronus and hung on tight. Follow that cloth. Tom calls and his Patronus starts galloping after the dark cloak. A chase ensues and the Lethifold leads Tom deeper and deeper into the forbidden forest. Tom doesn't mind and rides after the floating cloth. He could just open a portal and return to the castle at any time. The cloth led Tom up a hill and on the other side is a group of sleeping giants. The Lethifold hid behind the back of a towering giant and hoped to escape while Tom is preoccupied with these huge creatures. Sneaky little bastard has some brains, huh? Tom thought as he hoped he wouldn't have to fight a group of giants. The light from the Patronus woke the sleeping giants as they rub their tired eyes and spot where the light is coming from. Though they spotted Tom riding his glowing Thestral, the good and happy feelings from the Patronus seemed to somehow calm them. The giants simply look at Tom and his Thestral with smiles on their dumb faces. They don't attack, nor do they even get up from their position on the ground. Tom smirks as he sees the giants smiling with blissful expressions. It's behind that one. Tom points to a giant. Circle around and ram your head into its back. Tom commands and hops off the Thestral. The Patronus does as Tom said and circled the giant. The giant was laying down in a blissful daze, so it stayed perfectly still. The Lethifold thought that it was safe and the giants would take care of its problem. It wasn't ready for when the Thestral Patronus rammed its head straight into the back of the giant. The head of the Thestral struck the Lethifold and the cloth started burning where the head made contact. The Lethifold started shrieking in pain and tried once again to run away. Before the black cloak could make a run for it, the Thestral Patronus started stomping its feet repeatedly onto the downed cloth. Just like before, every place the Thestral's hooves stomped started burning away. This repeated until the Lethifold was nothing but a small piece of cloth no bigger than a dish rag. The cloth lay there unmoving. No screams, no floating, no nothing. The Thestral Patronus stomped on the cloth one final time and the Lethifold disintegrated into nothing. Seeing its job was done, the Thestral went to return to Tom but was stopped by an angry-looking giant. Nice thing hurt Brig don't like nice thing anymore. It grunts and moves to attack the Patronus. Tom saw that the Lethifold was beaten and had no plans to fight giants. He opened a portal into his room in Hogwarts and walked in. Before closing the portal, Tom unsummoned the Patronus. He then closed the portal, leaving behind some very irate giants. Tom took a breath and inwardly celebrated his victory. Not many people can say that they hunted and killed a Lethifold. Although his Patronus did all the work, the Patronus is the only known defense against Lethifolds. Other spells wouldn't have had much of an effect on these sorts of creatures. After celebrating his victory, Tom went straight to bed. He has to be up for training as usual, and it was almost midnight. The next morning, Tom and the whole of Slytherin, besides the first years, woke up bright and early for their training. Before training even started, Tom drew everyone's attention to himself. "Attention, everyone. I have an announcement." Tom yelled, and everyone shut their mouths and listened quietly. "Lately I've been working on a way for us to communicate and tell who is and isn't a member of my followers. I'm happy to say that I've created the perfect answer to both of those problems. Druella, would you step forward please?" Druella comes forward and stands beside Tom with a curious expression. "What do I have to do?" she asks. "Hold out your right arm with your palm upwards please," Tom says, and she does as he instructed. Tom places the tip of his wand on her wrist. With his other hand, he draws on the eldritch energy, and runic symbols appear and surround her wrist as well. He then chants a few words and the tip of his wand lights up. Tom then pulls out some ink and pours it onto her wrist. As the light from Tom's wand dies down, the eldritch runes disappear into Druella's skin along with the ink. What's left behind is a small black tattoo of a snake eating its own tail on her wrist. "This is the mark that all of you shall receive. It does two things. First, it can be hidden and revealed at will, like this." Tom touches the mark and channels magic into it, and it disappears. "And it can also do this." "Hello, Drew. Wow, I heard you in my mind just now," Druella exclaims as she tries to reply. "Hey, Tom. I heard you loud and clear. Good job figuring out how to reply, Drew," Tom says, and Druella looks happy with her new tattoo. "Everyone form a line and show your wrists. After you've all received the mark, we'll begin training as usual." Everyone makes a line and eagerly awaits their mark. Tom didn't reveal the fact that the mark will notify him of their lies. It's better to keep that to himself. If they knew that getting the mark would take away their ability to lie to him, they definitely wouldn't be this eager to receive it. Of course, Tom turned off the lie function of Druella's mark. He didn't want to know every white lie she tells him. That may ruin their friendship, and Tom didn't want that to happen. Although, the function can be turned back on at any time. If something were to happen and he needs the truth from her, he can just turn it on when needed. Chapter 60, Master. With the mark in place, Tom will have an easier time contacting his followers. He just needs to contact all of the followers that graduated last year and give them the mark as well. The rest of the school year was spent going through the motions. Tom made sure to spend the majority of his free time on becoming an animagus. Other than meditating to find his spirit animal, Tom has been dabbling in battle transfiguration. He's been working on things like changing the floor into spikes to turning anything into an animal or human to fight for him. Things like animals and human forms are a bit beyond him at the moment. Whenever he tries to make something as intricate as that, it would come out disfigured and revert to whatever it originally was. Tom allowed the Slytherins to win the House Cup this year. Although, he made sure that the gap between them and the other houses wasn't too big. With the training his followers are being put through, they could demolish the other house. Especially in the practical use of magic. Before returning to Camartage, Tom charged Druella with contacting the graduates from last year. She would schedule meetings so Tom could give the rest of his followers the mark. In order not to cause suspicion, Tom had them show up in batches. The location would alternate for every batch as to not give away the meeting places. When his 4th year of Hogwarts ended, Tom ended up staying in Slytherin Manor instead of going straight to Camartage as usual. It took 3 weeks to finish marking all of his graduated followers, and boy did it feel good. They may have sworn their loyalty to him, but now he feels as though there's an extra failsafe from betrayal. If they somehow found a way to circumvent their oaths, which is extremely doubtful to happen, Tom would have that extra parachute to keep him safe. Before opening the portal to return to Camartage, Mimsy gave Tom yet another report on the life of Captain America. The good captain still hasn't been allowed to join the war. Steve goes from state to state doing his shows as a war bond salesman. Although he hates every moment of it, he is helping his country pay for a very costly war. When Tom returned to Camartage, he went straight to the Ancient One. "You're late," she says as she pores through a very old-looking book. "Sorry, I had to take care of something before coming," Tom replies as he takes a seat on the sofa. "What are you looking for in that book?" "Nothing you need to stick your nose into," she says as she casually flips through the pages. "I hope you've kept up with your training. If you can't make at least 10 different eldritch weapons by now, I may have to rethink making you my personal student." Tom doesn't reply and starts drawing on the eldritch energy. He first forms his great sword, and that sword starts morphing into different weapons. An axe, staff, knife, flail, hammer, etc. Tom ended up creating 25 different weapons. The Ancient One looked up from her book and gave her student an approving nod. "Congratulations, Tom. You are now a master of the mystic arts," she says as she closes her book with a loud thud. The second Tom hears what she said, a proud smile forms on his face. "Don't be too full of yourself though. That just means you've passed the smallest requirements to graduated from being a student. I've provided you a strong base to build up from. If you want to continue your studies into the mystic arts, you'll have to learn the rest on your own. Of course, that doesn't mean you can't come to me with questions. I'm still your teacher and that won't change no matter how much you grow," the Ancient One says with a bit of emotion. "Thanks, teacher." Tom gave her a formal bow and flashed her a smile. "I'll be sure to bug you with any questions from now on." Sigh. "Yeah, just don't interrupt my me time, alright? Also, come find me tomorrow. Every master gets a chance to find a compatible relic for themselves. We'll go from sanctum to see if you have one," she says, and Tom's eyes light up like fireworks. Relics are items of power like Doctor Strange's Cloak of Levitation and the Ancient One's Eye of Agamotto. They have a slight sentience to them, so Tom can't just walk in and choose whatever catches his eye. The relics would have to pick who can wield them. He only hopes that at least one of the relics on display in the sanctums will choose him. It would be awesome to be chosen by more than one though. "Can we not go now?" Tom asks with his best puppy dog eyes. "No, I'm busy with something at the moment. I should have it all wrapped up by tomorrow though." She wasn't affected and starts shooing Tom away as she dives back into the book from earlier. "Oh, and seeing as you're a master now, you can dress however you like. Thank God I can finally stop wearing these robes," Tom thought and went to his room. "Now I just have to graduate Hogwarts and I'll never have to wear robes again. Unless it's for some sort of formal reason. Then I'll just have to grin and bear it." Tom returned to his room in Camartage and happily changed into some normal muggle clothes. No matter how much he wears them, robes will never be as comfortable as a nice pair of pants along with a shirt. After changing his clothes, Tom goes to the library and browses for what he should start studying first. As a master, he now has unfettered access to all parts of the library. Of course, there are sections that only the Ancient One has access to. The only way to get a book from these places is to ask and hope she agrees. As Tom is browsing the bookshelves, he sees a black book with no title. Something told him that this book would be interesting. It was getting late, so Tom just took the book and returned to his room. Usually, books weren't allowed to leave the library, but Tom is a master now, so he has more privileges than before. When Tom returned to his room, it was almost time for him to get some sleep. He wakes up far too early to stay up late for no reason. Before draining his magic, as he does every night, Tom opened the black book and looked to see what it's about. He couldn't stop the smile from his face when he saw what the book entailed. Shadow manipulation, huh? I think I'll stay up a bit later tonight, Tom thought as he gets absorbed into the black book. Chapter 61, Shadows. Tom didn't go to sleep until he finished the book on shadow manipulation. It explained the ability to control one's shadow and use it in battle. There are 2 drawbacks to shadow manipulation. 1. Tom won't be able to control any shadows but his own. 2. His shadow can't leave him, ever. He is the one casting his shadow, so how could it ever leave his side? Although those 2 things make shadow manipulation seem less appealing, there are still a few things he can do with his shadow. First, he can stretch and morph his shadow into anything. Of course, there's a limit on length and size depending on how big your shadow is at the moment. Second, Tom would be able to bind someone with his shadow. Similar to Shikamaru from Naruto, Tom would have to stretch his shadow into the target's. His shadow would then bind the target's shadow, which would cause the target to be bound as well. Though the target must be weaker than Tom in physical strength, or else they would be able to break the shadow's grip. Another level of shadow binding is the ability to control the target's body while bound. In order to do this, Tom would have to be considerably stronger than the target. Not only would he need enough power to bind them, but he would also need enough to control their body. Third, similar to the shadow binding, Tom would be able to move his shadow into the shadow of an object. In doing so, he could move an object by binding its shadow and pulling it towards him. This is a good skill for stealing. Fourth, with enough practice, Tom could attack with his shadow as well. He would have to morph his shadow into a weapon and attack the target's shadow. Any attacks against the target's shadow would appear on their body. Slash the shadow's wrist with enough force and the hand of the target would be severed at the wrist. This is the highest level of shadow manipulation and would take time to learn. Though Tom wants nothing more than to start working on this, he can't just start controlling his shadow. The mystic arts are performed by taking power from external sources. To control shadows, Tom has to draw power from the shadow dimension. The problem with this is Tom doesn't know if there's a ruler of the shadow dimension. If there is a ruler and he starts taking energy from their dimension, who knows what the consequences could be. Although it's not the same as linking himself to the dimension, as the Ancient One did to the dark dimension, intruding on the property of a cosmic being isn't something Tom wants to do. The book says that the shadow dimension has no ruler, but who knows how old this book is. It's best to be careful and ask the Ancient One about this, Tom thought as he drained his magic before bed. Speaking of linking himself to the shadow dimension, the book says that if he were to link himself to it, which no known sorcerer has ever done, other powers should become available to him. This is from a more theorized section of the book, but Tom agrees with it. If he were to link himself to the shadow dimension, he should gain far more control over shadows. I'll make that my goal, but it probably won't happen for a while, Tom thought as he tucked himself into bed. The next day, Tom ended up sleeping in. He stayed up way later than he wanted, but the book he found was far too interesting for him to wait until the morning. After going through his usual morning training, Tom went to look for the Ancient One. He found her overlooking the training of some novices. "Hey, teacher," Tom calls as he walks beside her. "Have you finished with everything from yesterday?" "Yes, just a pesky demon that was trying to break through to our dimension," she says casually as if it was nothing. "Huh? Was it hard to deal with?" Tom asked curiously. "No, I just needed to find out what type of demon it was. After I knew what it was, dealing with it was fairly simple," the Ancient One replies with a wave of her hand. "Oh, that's good. Do you have time before we go to the sanctums?" I found what I'm going to study next, but I have some questions. Tom says. Already coming to me for questions, I see. Follow me. She says, and they go to her private quarters. Ask away. She says as they take a seat across from one another. Well, I found this book on shadow manipulation. In order to start practicing, I have to draw energy from the shadow dimension. The book says that it has no ruler, but things can change as time passes. I would rather not find myself on the bad side of some sort of cosmic being. Tom says, and the Ancient One nods as he speaks. It's good that you came to me before doing anything rash. I'm not sure of the state of the shadow dimension though. There's far too many dimensions for me to keep track of them all. She says, and Tom's face drops in disappointment. Though that doesn't mean you can't find out on your own. How? Tom asks as his disappointment morphs into curiosity. Do you remember your trip through the dimensions on our first meeting? The Ancient One asks. Oh, yeah. Do you mean that I should go to the shadow dimension in my astral form? Tom replies with a slightly worried expression. Other than that time when he first met the Ancient One, Tom has never been to another dimension. Even during that time, she was in the driver's seat and Tom was only along for the ride. Yes, but I'll be accompanying you. This will be your first time willingly traveling to another dimension, so I'll tag along to make sure nothing goes wrong. As she says this, Tom's worried expression eased considerably. Thanks, teacher. Tom says wholeheartedly. Should we go to the shadow dimension first or go look for my relic? Tom asks excitedly. Let's get you a relic first. It's what we planned for today anyway. If finding your relic takes too long, then we'll simply head to the shadow dimension tomorrow. She says, and Tom agrees easily. Where to first? Tom asks. Well, there are some relics stored away here in Camartage, so we'll start here and work our way through the New York, London, and Hong Kong sanctums. The Ancient One says and leads Tom out of the room. I hope I get something good. Tom thought as he follows closely behind the Ancient One. Chapter 62 Relic Search. The Ancient One escorted Tom to an area of Camartage he has never been before. He didn't even know this place existed in the first place. The area resembled that of a museum with what Tom believes to be relics on display in glass cases. We are going to walk past every relic and see if either you or one of the relics reacts. If you feel any attraction towards anything or any odd feelings, let me know and we'll find your relic. The Ancient One says as she gives Tom a tour of the place. She didn't explain every relic they passed, but she would give descriptions of those that seemed to catch Tom's eye. For example, the necklace of bottle which grants its wearer the ability to summon a massive army of unkillable ghost bears, while cursing the user with becoming a mindless werbear once a month. This isn't something Tom is remotely interested in. Yeah, the army of ghost bears is slightly interesting, but becoming a mindless werbear isn't appeal to him at all. One of the relics that Tom wouldn't mind getting is the Eye of Agamemnon, which is a medallion similar to the Eye of Agamotto. It can reveal the true nature of things to its wielder. That sounds extremely similar to the skill observed from the gamer. It's too bad that this relic didn't choose him. The relic that Tom wanted the most out of every single one that the Ancient One showed him was a beast of a sword called Dragon Fang. When Tom asked about the sword, her explanation only made him want it more. A wizard named Kajita carved this nearly indestructible sword from the tusk of an extra-dimensional dragon. The sword was passed into my possession for safekeeping upon that wizard's death. She explained as Tom started salivating over the sword before him. Do you feel drawn to the sword? No, but can I have it anyway? Tom asked as he stares up at his teacher with a hopeful expression. No, now keep moving, we don't have all day. She says and completely crushes her students' hopes and dreams. Tom gave one last look at the beastly-looking sword and reluctantly followed after the Ancient One. Although, he made sure to air his displeasure as he muttered about stingy old ladies and their bald heads. The Ancient One ignored him completely and continued with her tour of the place. By the time they finished the tour, Tom hasn't found a single relic that chose him. Though he didn't allow himself to get depressed just yet. There are 3 other sanctums filled with relics. His chances of getting at least one are still fairly good. Alright, let's head to the Hong Kong sanctum first. The Ancient One says as she opens a portal. They walk through and Tom is met with yet another museum-type setup. The place had the same Eastern aesthetic as Kamartaj. They once again started touring the place and Tom still didn't find his relic. Although, the Hong Kong sanctum did have some very interesting relics. For example, the staff of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong Rui Jingu Bang. Tom may not be interested in fighting with a staff, but that didn't stop him from admiring it. Keep up. The Ancient One called. Coming. Since Tom didn't find any compatible relics, they moved on to the London sanctum. When Tom exited the portal, he was met with a more Western-style museum compared to the last 2. As they toured this one, Tom was starting to lose hope in his chances of getting a relic. With every glass case they passed, Tom would get more and more depressed. After searching the entire London sanctum, Tom would once again be leaving empty-handed. At this point, even the Ancient One was starting to think Tom may not have a relic. Although, that doesn't mean he will never have one. He would just have to find his relic somewhere else. Tom's only chance of having a relic except him lay in the New York sanctum. Before entering the portal, Tom crossed his fingers and took a deep breath. Come on. Just one relic is all I need. Tom thought as he stepped through the portal. The second he stepped through the portal, one of the glass cases shattered. As the glass shattered, something came flying in Tom's direction. A loud thud was heard as it impacts Tom's chest and knocks him over. Huh, I guess you do have a relic after all. The Ancient One says as she eyes what lays on Tom's chest. It's a small wooden statue of a snake about the size of a shoebox. As Tom picks himself up, he holds the statue in front of him and studies it carefully. What is it? Tom says as he feels a slight warmth as he clutches the wooden snake. That is the snake totem. It's a symbol that serves as an emblem of the snake god. Think of the totem as a conduit which the snake god can use to affect our world. It seems that you've caught the eye of a very powerful being. The Ancient One says. Is that good or bad? Tom asks as he looks at the totem warily. It could go either way. I don't know enough about the snake god. I know that she is a woman and that she usually doesn't involve herself with the mortal world. Although, it's not like she could access this world in the first place. Well, except for that totem of course. She explains. So, what does it do? Tom asks as he keeps clutching the totem. It may be a totem of some sort of snake deity, but Tom feels a strong connection to it. Just holding the totem seems to calm his mind and bring about a happy feeling. Nothing that I know of for sure. Though there are tales of this exact totem granting followers of the snake god mystical powers. You'll have to figure all of that out by yourself. Just be careful when dealing with gods. They aren't allowed access to this world without help from our side. If you end up meeting her at some point, which is very possible to happen, make sure to find out her intentions. Forming pacts with gods isn't against the rules, but forming pacts that could bring ruin to this world certainly is. The Ancient One explained in a very serious manner. Don't worry, teacher. I'll be extra careful with anything to do with this totem. Tom responds seriously as he holds up his new relic. Good, also be sure to keep that totem in a safe place. Just because it's your relic doesn't mean it can't be stolen. she says as a mother would to a child. All right, but where the hell do I store this thing? Tom says, and suddenly the totem started shrinking and morphing its shape. It changed into a string necklace with a small wooden snake pendant hanging from it. It seems the snake god wishes for you to carry the totem on you at all times. The Ancient One says as she scans the totem for anything that could harm her student. Nothing. I'll watch him closely for a while to make sure though. Huh, alright I guess. Tom says as he places the necklace around his neck. Do you think I'll have another relic here somewhere? Chapter 63, Second Relic? After touring around the New York sanctum, Tom found one other relic that reacted to him. It seems New York is my lucky city. Tom thinks as he admires his second relic. Held in his hand are the vaulting boots of Walter. These things belonged to Carl Mordo in MCU canon, but Tom seemed to get to them first in this world. They increase the wearer's leaping ability, nullify the adverse effects of impacts from high landings, and are also capable of allowing the wearer to briefly walk on air. When in use, the boots emit orange sparks for each step taken. Yeah, these boots will come in handy during fights. Just the ability to change direction while in the air will be life-saving. Tom thinks as he casts a Scourgify spell on the boots before putting them on. Who knows how many smelly feet sorcerers used these boots before me. With the boots nice and clean, Tom places them on and takes them for a spin. First, he jumps and bangs his head on the very high ceiling of the New York sanctum. Ow, fuck. Tom yells and grabs his head but still manages to land safely on his feet. As he lands on his feet, the boots cushion his fall as they're supposed to. After holding his head in pain and glaring at the Ancient One for laughing at him, Tom jumped again and tried to walk on air. He managed to find a foothold mid-air and the boots started glowing where he stood, creating a sort of floor below the boots. Though it didn't last long as the light below the boots flickered for a moment and he fell. This time Tom didn't land on his feet, but he wasn't high enough to receive anything more than a minor bruise. A bit of practice and I'll master using these boots in no time at all, Tom thought as they finished the tour. Tom was hoping to find something related to his Pendragon lineage, but something like that would have most likely been in the London sanctum. Since he didn't find anything like that there, stuff like that must be in his Pendragon vault. By the time they were finished, it was already late in the evening. They wouldn't have time to go to the shadow dimension, so they decided to go tomorrow. The Ancient One left immediately with the excuse of having her me time. What she's really going to do is go to her personal library and read up on everything about the snake god. It's very rare for a god's relic to choose a sorcerer. She's only seen it happen one other time. Thankfully, nothing horrible happened because of it, but that doesn't mean she should let her guard down. The Ancient One may hide it very well, but Tom is her favorite student. Many have come into her care over the years, but none were as young as Tom. What also helps is she can't see his future. Not knowing what the other person is going to say or do makes time with them far more pleasant. She would rather not have him get killed by a god because she didn't do some research. While the Ancient One is making sure her student's relic won't harm him, said student is doing the exact same thing. Tom went straight to the library in Camartage for texts on the snake god as well. He could only find a single book filled with the names of known gods. In it, he found that the snake god's name is Manasa. Also in the book is names of other animal-type gods. Apparently, there's a spider god as well. I wonder if Spider-Man was blessed by the spider god or something, Tom thought as he closed the book and put it back on the shelf. Since he couldn't find any other books on the snake god, Tom went to his room to get some sleep. Before jumping into bed, he drained his magic as per usual. As he lay in bed tired from his lack of magic, Tom glances at the necklace around his neck. He holds up the pendant and just stares at it. Maybe I should try praying? Tom thought, as it is a god he's dealing with. With a shrug, Tom holds the snake pendant in his hand and starts praying. Snake god, Manasa. I've never prayed to any god, so congratulations, you're my first. I'm not sure how prayers are supposed to work though. Am I supposed to start praising you or something? I doubt you're interested in me stroking your ego, so I won't. Is there a way for you to send me a message or something? I have some questions, if that's alright. If you can respond, do so now. If you can't respond, send me a sign through the totem. Tom says, and the snake pendant's eyes glow red for a moment. Alright, so you can't reply, but you're getting the message, that's good. Give me 1 shine of the eyes for yes and 2 for no. If you can do that, shine the eyes 3 times in a row. The pendant reacts and the eyes shine 3 times. Will we be able to speak soon? Tom asks, and the eyes shine a single time. Good, I would like to figure out this totem sooner rather than later. Next question, do I have to do anything other than wearing the totem to meet you? He asks, and the eyes shine a single time. Can I do something to speed up that meeting? The eyes flash twice this time. Alright, I'll pray again if I have any questions. Good night, Manasa. As Tom said good night, the eyes glowed once as if you say good night as well. He then went straight to sleep as he has a trip to the shadow dimension tomorrow. While Tom slept, he dreamed of a giant snake that reminded him of Jormungandr, the world serpent from God of War. Although, it didn't have a beard and somehow didn't come across as a man. Standing before something so utterly gigantic made Tom feel especially small. The snake tried to speak to him, and no matter what it said, Tom couldn't hear a word come out of its mouth. When he awoke the next morning, Tom didn't remember his dream of the humongous serpent, nor did he know he even had a dream at all. Chapter 64, Time Snooper. After going through the usual morning training, Tom cleaned himself up and went looking for the Ancient One. He made sure to wear his new boots, while he always has the snake totem around his neck. After searching through Kamartaj, Tom found his teacher in one of the outdoor training halls. She was meditating and floating above the ground with the Eye of Agamotto active. Tom didn't want to disrupt her, so he sat on one of the steps and meditated himself. He's been spending most of his free time trying to find his spirit animal, and it's been taking longer than he thought it would. The Ancient One couldn't find much in her library about the snake god, Manasa. She isn't a god that has had many encounters with sorcerers, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. If she doesn't have contact with sorcerers, that could mean she doesn't do anything that endangers the earth. Although, it could also mean that she's careful and haven't been caught. After spending the whole night searching for information, she decided to look into the future. The next morning, once she took care of some important things, the Ancient One activated the Eye of Agamotto and looked for anything that has to do with the snake god. She couldn't find anything in the many possible futures, as Tom seems to be involved and his presence blocks her sight. Seeing as her future sight was blocked, she started looking into the past. She found that Manasa was a snake goddess that the Native Americans worshipped. She was the representation of fertility, rebirth, death, and immortality. Female Native Americans would sacrifice animals in her name to boost their fertility. They would also pray for the safe birth of their children. Everyone would pray to Manasa for a long and happy life, and upon the death of a loved one, the family would ask her to send the dead along to their next life. Of course, this would be accompanied by a sacrifice in her name, which was usually an animal, as human sacrifice wasn't very popular. After seeing the past of the Native Americans, the Ancient One started looking at the history of the snake totem itself. Although, she couldn't look into its future as it is in Tom's possession now. Once again the Ancient One was stuck with seeing the past. She looked into the past and saw the many years the totem spent in the New York sanctum. Going further back into the past, she saw how the totem was found by Agamotto himself and stored away. He found it in the ruins of an underground temple held in the hands of a female skeleton. Diving deeper into the past, she sees the woman worship the totem and gain powers in return. The woman was heavily favored by the snake god, Manasa. The woman went on to rule the strongest Native American tribe. She spread the word of the great snake god, Manasa, far and wide. Upon her death, her children fought over who would rule next and wield the power of the totem. Seeing her children fighting over all that she built, the woman didn't trust any of her children with the totem. She didn't trust them not to anger Manasa since they weren't favored as she was. She ended up taking the totem to her grave and named her close friend the next chief of her tribe. The tomb is where the totem was found by the first sorcerer supreme, Agamotto. The Ancient One didn't look back any further and exited her meditation. She's supposed to take her student to the shadow dimension today to see if it has a ruler. Speaking of her student, he's currently meditating a few meters away from her. Checking the time, she sees that it's getting late. If they want to go to the shadow dimension, it's now or they will have to postpone for tomorrow. With a slight smirk, the Ancient One levitates a pebble from the ground and launches it at Tom's forehead. Thud. Shit. Tom awakens from his meditation with a scream and holds his head where a red mark could be seen. Oh, you're done meditating? The Ancient One says as if she didn't just attack him. Let's get going then. I want to get this trip to the shadow dimension done quickly so I can relax for the rest of the night. You couldn't just tap me on the shoulder or call my name? Tom says as he glares daggers at his teacher. I don't know what you're talking about. She says as she waves her hand at Tom. Let's get going already. Tom followed after her as he muttered about his annoying bald teacher. As always, the Ancient One acted like he said nothing at all as they moved to her personal quarters. The Ancient One activates some barriers around the place in order to protect their physical bodies. They're going into the astral plane to survey the shadow dimension unnoticed. Their physical bodies will be left behind and vulnerable to attack, so the barriers will keep out any unwanted guests and inform her of any possible intruders. Alright, since we'll be traveling in our astral forms, I've placed some protections for our physical bodies. She says as she finished with the barriers. Don't reveal your astral form during our excursion. We aren't going to fight any cosmic beings, nor are we going to ask permission to draw upon their dimension. We go in and see if anyone has claimed the shadow dimension and then we leave. Do you understand? Yes, in and out without revealing ourselves. Tom says as he finds a comfortable spot to leave his body. Good, I'm going to leave my body in my bed. I'm too old to be leaving it in random places. The last time I did that, I had a kink in my neck for the rest of the week. She says and leaves Tom in the living room. Tom decided to just leave his body on the sofa and separated from his physical form, becoming an existence of pure energy. Time slowed in the material plane as Tom saw his body breathing at a very slow pace. After a moment, the Ancient One floats into the room in her astral form. How are we traveling through our astral forms anyway? We don't have our sling rings in the astral plane after all. Tom asks. Yet you still have the sling ring attached to your hand. Just because we've entered the astral plane, doesn't mean we still don't have access to some of our relics and items. Though your boots are fairly useless since we can fly in the astral plane. She says and Tom wears a look of realization. Why didn't I notice that sooner? Tom thought as the Ancient One opened a portal to the shadow dimension. Let's go and remember not to reveal yourself. She says and floats through the portal. Coming. Chapter 65, Shadow Dimension. As they passed through the portal, they're met with a universe of different shades of gray. No floors or ceilings. Just an endless sea of gray in every direction. So, how do we tell if the dimension has a ruler or not? We're not just going to start floating in a random direction, are we? Tom asks as he floats beside his teacher. No, I'm going to meditate and attune myself to this dimension. Once I've attuned myself to it, I'll spread my senses out and see if I sense anything. She says, and Tom looks at her funny for a moment. Wait, you're telling me that you will sense everything in this entire dimension? Tom asks unbelievably. Don't underestimate your teacher. I can do a great many things, and in the future so will you. You just need to keep diligently practicing, and you'll find that the mystic arts only become more grand and complicated as you advance forward. She says, and Tom looks at her in awe for a moment. Sometimes I forget that you're the strongest human on planet Earth. It's times like this that I'm reminded that my old bald teacher is actually very skilled. Tom says matter-of-factly, and the Ancient One's eyebrow twitches. She can only remain stoic for so long. Sooner or later, Tom is going to call her old and bald, and she's going to trap him in a hell dimension as punishment. She would let him out after a while, of course. Though maybe she should let it sink in for a while before releasing him? While pondering hellish punishments for her loose-lipped student, the Ancient One started meditating and attuning herself with the shadow dimension. Tom had no idea what to do while waiting, so he meditates as well. The wait for his spirit animal to reveal itself has gone on long enough. He entered his inner world and found a nice spot in the forest to meditate in. Tom gets lost in the trance of meditation as he closes his eyes and lets everything go. No thoughts enter his mind as he loses all track of time. While meditating in a forest surrounded by nature, Tom sat unmoving with his eyes closed as he breathes in and out. Suddenly, the bushes to his left start ruffling. Tom hears this, but doesn't react as that could scare away his spirit animal. Soon the bushes stop making noise and he could hear something drawing closer. After a moment of waiting with anticipation, he feels something slither its way into his lap. Tom couldn't take it anymore and opened his eyes. In front of him is a pure white snake with a red underbelly and red eyes to match. Tom isn't an expert on snakes, but he knows that this one is definitely albino. Hello? Tom says, but the snake doesn't reply. Suddenly, the snake coils itself back and launches at Tom. He was taken by complete surprise as the snake jumped, but it didn't bare its fangs at him. The snake simply aimed its head at Tom's chest and pounced. As it collided with his chest, the white and red snake was absorbed into Tom completely. As it did this, Tom's mind became turbulent and he was thrown out of his inner world. When he returned to the shadow dimension, Tom could feel his astral body morphing extremely slowly. He was shrinking and changing. If Tom guessed correctly, then he was shifting into his animagus form. A problem arose as Tom's astral form has no wizard-type magic in it. This is the reason for the incredibly slow pace the change is going at. He had nothing to support his first shift into his spirit animal, and it was starting to feed on the energy of his astral form. This is not good, as using the energy of his astral form will shorten his lifespan. In this short amount of time, Tom has already lost 4 months of his life. In a panic to not lose the precious time he has to live, Tom starts looking for another place to fuel the change. What better place than the dimension filled with shadows he's currently in? Without thinking too much into it, Tom starts drawing on the shadow dimension. Due to him literally being surrounded by said dimension, the floodgates opened and shadows came pouring in. The surrounding shadows began to congregate around Tom and were absorbed to power his animagus change. Suddenly, the change quickened and Tom started morphing at a much faster pace. Except there is something wrong with his animal form. The once albino snake is being tainted by the shadows of this dimension. Its white scales are dyed a dark gray as the red of its underbelly becomes completely black. The only thing left red on the entire snake is the bright red eyes matching Tom's completely. As Tom completed his shift into a snake, he could feel the shadows around him. They felt comfortable and relaxing, as if they were a part of him. No, they felt like home. As if he wasn't in a dark shadow dimension, but laying in his bed at home. "What do you think you're doing?" the Ancient One exclaims, ruining Tom's moment. She was in the middle of scanning her senses through the entire dimension. Then she started feeling a shift in the shadows and thought it could be some cosmic being. Color her surprised when she saw that the anomaly she felt originated very close to her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a black snake and almost didn't recognize it as her student. Thankfully, it has red eyes just like Tom's. That, combined with the fact that she knew he has been working on becoming an animagus, made everything click into place in her mind. Tom tried to reply, but as a snake, he cannot speak to her. She isn't a Parselmouth, so how could she possibly understand him? Suddenly, the shadows near them parted and a man with pale skin, long white hair, and glowing red eyes appeared. He's dressed in black Gothic-style leather armor with metal accents and carries a pitch-black sword in his hand. "I am Null, Lord of Shadows, God of the Symbiotes. I know you are there. Stop hiding and come out, now." Chapter 66, Trouble. The white-haired man commanded as an unyielding pressure could be felt radiating from his body. The second this Lord of Shadows arrives, Tom and the Ancient One thought the same exact thing. Fuck. Although, now their question has been answered. The shadow dimension does have a ruler and his name is Null. Tom tried to turn back into his human form but found himself stuck as a snake. He's never shifted before and the book only said to relax and wish yourself back to normal. How the hell am I supposed to relax with the god of symbiotes yelling at me a few meters away? Tom thought as he tried and failed to calm himself down. The Ancient One simply sighed and shook her head. This could have been such an easy trip had Tom not done something idiotic. All they had to do was slip in and out. In fact, Tom simply had to do nothing and everything would have worked out perfectly. Why couldn't he just wait patiently? The Ancient One took a deep breath, even though she doesn't need to breathe in her astral form, and lets all of her frustration go. "We'll have to retreat. I'm not prepared to fight a god, nor do I want to deal with this particular one." The Ancient One looks over at her student and could already tell that he was panicking. She could see that he isn't able to change back into his human form. "If you won't come out, I'll have to capture you myself," Null says casually as he stared at the exact area where the two intruders were floating. Before the Lord of Shadows could move forward, the Ancient One activated the Eye of Agamotto and slowed his movement. Time seemed to halt around Null as his movements were as slow as a snail. He seemed to have noticed as a bloodthirsty smirk appears on his face. He knows only one being that can control time like this and would love to slice her in half from bald head to toe. He started putting more power into his movements and was getting faster with every step. With a sigh, the Ancient One opens a portal and grabs her student's noodle-like body. They fly through the portal and Null breaks through the time dilation around him. He picks up speed and tries to follow them through the portal, but it closes and he misses his chance. As Tom and his teacher appear in her private quarters, the Ancient One didn't even wait for a single second and threw her student into his body. With the return to his physical body, came the return of his human form. His panic started to subside and a moment later the Ancient One comes walking in with an annoyed expression. Sorry, teacher," Tom says as he sees her walk over to a shelf and pull out an old tome. "Mistakes happen and we move past them," she says as she starts skimming the book for the right page. "Do you know the predicament you're in now?" "I can guess, yes," Tom says with a grave look on his face. "My animagus form is connected to the shadow dimension, which means that I'm connected to the shadow dimension. The same dimension that seems to be ruled by some evil shadow/symbiote god. At least you aren't a complete imbecile." she says as she finds the right page. Lay down on the couch, now. Tom does as his teacher says, and she walks over and starts forming symbols of eldritch energy all around him. What are you doing? Tom asks as he studies the symbols around him. I'm locking away your animagus form and blocking your connection to the shadow dimension, she says as more and more runic symbols crowd around Tom's body. It's the only way to keep Null from following your connection back here to Earth. As much as I wish to protest, as it took a lot of work to finally become an animagus, I agree and won't complain, Tom says with a sad smile on his face. He finally became an animagus and now he won't be able to turn into a snake again. At least until a time where there's no ruler of the shadow dimension, which would only happen if someone kills Null and doesn't want his realm. That's not very likely to happen. I'll have to kill him and take the shadow dimension for myself, he thought and chuckled in a self-deprecating manner. I'm far too weak to even think about taking dimensions from gods. I couldn't even think straight while in the presence of Null, yet I'm thinking about killing him. I need to get stronger. The Ancient One had no idea what her student was thinking of as she kept layering protections and barriers onto Tom's animagus form. After a minute passed, she finished her work, and Tom's snake form was wrapped up tightly and wouldn't be coming back out anytime soon. Tom's connection with the shadow dimension was temporarily severed. He wouldn't be able to draw on the power of said dimension, nor would he be able to turn into the black snake again. At least not until the bindings are removed. Done, now go and read up on Null in the library. It's best to know your enemy if you ever want to take those bindings off. Although, I forbid you from removing them without informing me first, the Ancient One says as Tom is still lost in thought. Yeah, Tom says as he gets up and leaves in a daze of his own thoughts. I need to get stronger. Tom does what his teacher said and looks up Null in the library. Null is an ancient malevolent deity who ruled over the abyss, the existential chasm that existed between the destruction of the sixth cosmos and the creation of the seventh cosmos, and was originally content to drift through the endless void. When the Celestials began creating the universe, Null was awakened by the light of the creation and was outraged at his kingdom of darkness being despoiled. Null retaliated by creating a sword of living darkness, the All-Black, which is the first symbiote, from his newly cast shadow, decapitating one of them. Cast back into the void by the other Celestials, Null used the slain Celestial's severed head as a forge to temper his sword in its cosmic energies. Intent on devouring the divine light that had usurped his kingdom of darkness, Null manifested a symbiotic suit of armor from the eldritch darkness he commanded and embarked on a genocidal campaign against the other gods and life itself, becoming a legendary figure of terror for divine beings even billions of years later. I need to get a lot stronger. Chapter 67 Dream Meeting. While Tom was reading up on Null, he couldn't help but look at All Black as a prized possession. I'm definitely taking that sword once I've killed him, Tom thought as his mood started to turn better. He knew that he was currently weak. No, scratch that. He's incredibly weak compared to a god that could slaughter Celestial with ease, but he would grow stronger with time. Although, there would always be a limit. I need to find a way to overcome my human body's limits, Tom thought, but put it to the back of his mind for now. I can worry about that once I find my limit. Tom thought of the ritual he has been planning and the knowledge of the super soldier serum. Those should help him break through his limits, but would it be enough to face a god? No, it wouldn't. Whatever. I'll just have to work my way up the stairs of power one step at a time, Tom says as he returned to his room to get some sleep. After doing the normal magic draining before bed, Tom went straight to sleep. As he closed his eyes, the eyes of the totem around his neck began to glow. Suddenly, Tom appeared on the beach of a small island. The island seemed to be deserted, but he could feel something watching him. As he was staring into the forest of the island, the calm waters behind him started becoming turbulent. Waves started smashing into the shore as the waters parted and a giant snake breached its head out of the ocean. As he hears the water raging behind him, Tom turned quickly and saw the monstrous snake. He felt as if he's seen this exact snake before but couldn't quite put his finger on when or where. Of course, this is the snake he saw in his dreams on the previous night. Hello, Tom hisses and gives an awkward wave. I'm dreaming, right? Yes, but our meeting is very real, the snake hisses back in a deep voice. Well, hello. I'm Tom, he introduces himself to the ginormous snake. Hello, I'm Manasa, Manasa replies in a deep unladylike voice. Like the snake god, Manasa, Tom asked as he curses his luck. Why do I keep meeting gods one after the other? Although, teacher said that this one favors me, hopefully. Manasa nods her big snake head affirmatively. Yes, I didn't think we would meet this quickly. Your need for power seems to have hastened our meeting, Manasa says in a happy tone. Oh, is there a way for you to shrink or change your shape? Talking to a giant snake like this is a bit unsettling. No offense, of course, Tom asks as nicely as possible to not anger the second god he's met in 24 hours. Manasa doesn't reply as her snake body shrinks and morphs its shape. Her snake body disappears and in its place is the body of a beautiful Lamia woman. The bottom half of her body is a long snake body with black scales. The snake part of her body is so long that it disappears under the ocean's surface. While the top half is a beautiful human woman from the waist up. She has paper white skin, black hair, and pure black eyes. Is this better? She responds in English. Yes, but could you cover yourself up, please? I'm a growing boy after all. Tom says and points to her uncovered breasts. Hee, you humans care about the weirdest of things. Manasa laughs and a shirt appears to cover her up. Thanks, did you say my need for power quickened our meeting? Tom says as his hormones start to settle down. Yes, I've seen everything through the totem I gave you. She says with a small smile. You saw my trip to the shadow dimension and the meeting with Null? Tom asks. Yes, and might I say how disappointing it was watching you panic so easily. Although, it is completely understandable. Null is a god that even I wish never to cross. Manasa says as she shakes her head. So, why did you give me this totem? Tom asks. Straight to the point, huh? Manasa says as she lounges in the ocean waters. Yeah, I'd like to know why a god would be interested in me. Tom says, causing Manasa to chuckle. Well, the answer is quite simple. I want you to become my avatar. Manasa says with a happy smile as her snake-like tongue pokes out of her mouth. Avatar? What's that? Tom asks questioningly. You would be the manifestation of my power in the material plane. Manasa answers as she looks at Tom with a happy expression. Why would you choose me as your manifestation? Tom asks wearily. Let me answer your question with a question. Do you know my domains? She asked back. No. I looked you up in the library, but there wasn't much. Tom replies. As the snake god, I hold dominion over fertility, immortality, death, and rebirth. She says and Tom isn't liking where this is going. So, you. Tom starts to say it but doesn't finish. I know that you are the combination of two different souls, yes. At the moment of the merge, a new soul was birthed. A rebirth of two souls, if you will. She says with a knowing smile. It was hard to miss, really. A rebirth in a body blessed with snake tongue was like a beacon to me. Oh, does anyone else know? Tom asks, hoping that the answer is no. Yes, there are other high-level entities that definitely know, but would they do anything about it? No, they have much bigger things to worry about than some human soul merging. She says with a wave of her hand. If it's not that big of a deal, then why do you want me to be your avatar? Tom asks with some suspicion in his voice. Because I find you worthy of the opportunity. She replies easily. Will I have to do anything in exchange? Tom asks, looking for some kind of catch to appear. Maybe? She replies with an unsure expression. Maybe? Tom repeats with a raised eyebrow. Well, I don't need anything at the moment, but who knows what could happen in the future. Manasa says with a shrug. So you're saying that if you need something, I would have to come and help? Tom asks as the appeal in becoming Manasa's avatar starts to grow smaller and smaller. Yes? You would be my avatar. If I needed something done in the mortal plane, I would contact you through the totem and tell you what to do. Sorry if I'm not being clear. I've never done this before, but Madam Webb said that you would make a good avatar. She says matter-of-factly. The more you speak, the more questions I have to ask. Tom says with a frustrated sigh. Yes, you're right. Let's end our meeting here. We're running out of time anyway. Manasa says as she slithers back beneath the surface of the ocean. Wait. Tom called, but she was already gone. What the hell am I supposed to do now? Master, it's time to wake up. This marks the end of part 8 of the story, I'm Voldemort. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe the video to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.